She failed an exam for helping a stranger, but he was an undercover billionaire who gave her love. Imani Baptiste had exactly 4 minutes to save her future. 4 minutes before the medical licensing exam proctor called time. 4 minutes before 3 years of sleepless nights, ramen dinners, and her mother's dying wish either paid off or crumbled into nothing. Her hand cramped around the pencil as she bubbled in answer 247 of 250. Almost there. Almost done. Almost. The man 2 rows ahead collapsed. Not dramatically. Not with a scream or a crash that demanded attention. He just slumped. 1 second upright, the next folded over his desk like someone had cut his strings. The kind of quiet collapse that meant something was very, very wrong. Imani's pencil froze mid-bubble. Everyone else kept writing. Heads down, focused, desperate. The proctor sat at the front scrolling his phone, oblivious. 300 future doctors in this room, and not one of them looked up. Except her. She could see the man's shoulders. They weren't moving. Not the shallow breathing of someone who fainted. Not moving at all. 3 minutes and 40 seconds left. Her test sat in front of her. 3 questions from finished. 3 questions between her and everything. Medical school loans that ate her alive. The scholarship that barely covered tuition. The night shifts at the hospital cafeteria where she smiled through exhaustion and pretended serving food was enough. Her mother's voice, weak and fading in that hospital bed 4 years ago. Baby girl, you're going to be the doctor I never got to see. Promise me. She'd promised. 3 minutes and 20 seconds. The man still wasn't moving. Imani looked at her test. Looked at the man. Back to her test. Ma's voice again, different memory. Money can't buy character, Imani. When somebody needs help and you're the only one who can give it, you give it. That's what makes you rich in ways that matter. Her mother had been 30 when she said that. 30 when the heart attack took her because she couldn't afford the medication that might have saved her. Imani was 34 now, and she understood exactly how much character cost. 2 minutes and 50 seconds. She stood up. The movement felt like jumping off a cliff. Her chair scraped loud against linoleum. Heads turned. The proctor looked up, annoyed. Ma'am, you cannot leave your... Someone needs help. Imani was already moving, her body on autopilot while her brain screamed at her to sit back down. That man collapsed. He's not breathing. She reached him in 5 strides. Pressed 2 fingers to his neck. No pulse. His lips were going blue. Call 911, she shouted at the proctor, who just stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Now. Her hands found his chest. Started compressions. 30 pumps, hard and fast, the way they drilled into her in every CPR certification. His sternum flexed under her palms. She tilted his head back, checked his airway, gave 2 rescue breaths. Nothing. Back to compressions. Her arms burned. Sweat dripped down her spine. 2 minutes left on the exam. She could hear pencils scratching, bubbles filling in. The sound of 300 futures being secured while hers crumbled. Someone help me. Her voice cracked. Please. Nobody moved. They couldn't. Leave your desk during the exam, your test gets invalidated. Automatic fail. Everybody knew the rules. 1 minute and 30 seconds. The man's chest moved. Once. Twice. He coughed, gasped, dragged in air like he was drowning. His eyes flew open, dark gray, confused, terrified, alive. You're okay, Imani said, her voice steadier than her hands. Just breathe. Ambulance is coming. She looked back at her desk. Her test. 1 minute left. The proctor stood over her test, red pen in hand. As she watched, he drew a thick X across the top. Invalidated. Failed. 3 years. Gone. The man she'd saved grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but insistent. Thank you, he whispered. You saved my life. Imani looked down at him. Really looked. Even pale and sweating, even gasping for breath, he had the kind of face that made you look twice. Strong jaw, dark hair falling into those gray eyes, the build of someone who didn't skip the gym. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down and jeans that had seen better days, nothing remarkable, but something about him felt different. Anyone would have done it, she lied. No. His eyes held hers. They didn't. The ambulance arrived. EMTs swarmed in. They loaded the stranger onto a gurney, asked Imani questions she answered on autopilot. The exam ended. 300 people filed out, relief on their faces, futures intact. Imani sat alone at her desk, staring at the invalidated test. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Paloma. How'd it go? You're going to kill it. She couldn't make her fingers type the response. Couldn't find the words for what she'd just done. Couldn't explain that she'd thrown away everything for a stranger who probably wouldn't even remember her name tomorrow. The proctor appeared beside her desk. Miss Baptiste. I need you to sign this form acknowledging the test invalidation. You can retake in 6 months. 6 months. 6 more months of cafeteria shifts and ramen and debt that grew faster than hope. 6 more months of not being what her mother died believing she'd become. Imani signed the form with a hand that didn't shake. She wouldn't give them that. She walked out of that testing center into a late spring morning that felt nothing like new beginnings. The sun was too bright. The air too warm. Everything too normal for a day when her entire life had just collapsed. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Baptiste. A woman's voice, professional and crisp. This is Clarity Hospital. The patient you assisted today, he's asking to speak with you. He's insisting, actually. Would you be willing to come by? Imani looked at the testing center behind her. Looked at the hospital address the woman rattled off. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. She had no idea that decision would change everything. Hey beautiful souls. If you're loving this story already, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing our global family. And to my returning viewers, thank you for being here. You're the reason these stories exist. Now let's dive into what happens when Imani walks into that hospital room. Clarity Hospital smelled like every hospital Imani had ever worked in. Antiseptic and sadness, hope and desperation, all mixed together under fluorescent lights that made everyone look half dead. She signed in at the visitor's desk, got a badge, followed the nurse to room 427. Her feet knew the path. She'd walked these halls 1,000 times with trays of food, cleaning up spills, smiling at patients who never really saw her. Today felt different. Today she was walking towards something that scared her more than failure. The nurse knocked, pushed open the door. Your visitor, Mr. Merrick. Merrick. At least now she had a name. He was sitting up in bed, color back in his face, looking nothing like the dying man she'd saved 2 hours ago. Someone had given him a hospital gown, but he wore it like he wore everything else. Carelessly, like clothes didn't matter. His dark hair was still messy, falling across his forehead. Those gray eyes locked onto her the second she walked in. You came. He sounded surprised. Relieved. You asked. Imani stayed by the door, hands in her jacket pockets because she didn't know what else to do with them. How are you feeling? Alive, thanks to you. He gestured to the chair beside his bed. Please. Sit. I owe you so much more than a conversation. She sat, mostly because standing felt too exposed. The doctors figure out what happened. Heart arrhythmia. Apparently, I've had an undiagnosed condition for years. He shook his head, something dark crossing his face. Could have died any time. Just lucky it happened in a room full of medical professionals. Lucky, Imani repeated. The word tasted bitter. Room full of medical professionals, and I'm the only one who helped. You're the only one who sacrificed something to help. His eyes held hers. They told me what happened. Your exam. I'm so sorry. Don't be. She made herself shrug like it didn't matter, like her entire world hadn't imploded. I made a choice. Somebody needed help, I gave it. That's what my ma always said. That's what makes you rich in ways that matter. Something shifted in his expression. Softened. Your mother sounds wise. Was. She died 4 years ago. The words came out flat because that's how she'd learned to say them. Flat meant they didn't hurt as much. Heart attack. Couldn't afford the medication that might have saved her. She was only. Imani stopped. She'd almost said her mother was 30. But that wasn't right. Her mother had been older. The grief just made everything blur together sometimes. I'm sorry, Stellan said quietly. That's not fair. None of that's fair. No. Imani looked at her hands. Capable hands. Hands that had pumped life back into this stranger's chest. Hands that had signed away her future. But fair doesn't pay bills. Fair doesn't bring people back. Fair is just a word people use when they don't want to admit the world is brutal. You're angry. I'm realistic. She met his eyes again. But I'm not here for therapy. You wanted to see me. Why? He leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. Because you saved my life and I watched them destroy yours for it. Because I need to know who you are. Because. He paused, something unreadable flickering across his face. Because I don't meet many people who do what you did. You don't know anything about me. I know you gave up everything in that room. I know you didn't hesitate. I know your name is Imani Baptiste and you work night shifts in the hospital cafeteria to pay for medical school. At her surprised look, he added, I asked. After they brought me in. I needed to find you. Why? The question came out sharper than she intended. So you can feel less guilty. So you can thank me and we both move on? I don't need your gratitude. What's done is done. What if I want to help you? I don't need your help. Yes, you do. He said it gently, but firmly. Let me pay for your retake. The exam fee, whatever it costs. 6 months from now, you'll. No. Imani stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. Absolutely not. I didn't save your life so you'd owe me something. I saved it because it needed saving. This isn't about debt. Yes, it is. She backed toward the door. And I don't want it. I don't want your money or your guilt or whatever this is. I made my choice. I'll live with it. Imani. Have a good life, Mr. Merrick. She was at the door now, hand on the handle. I hope you figure out what caused that arrhythmia. I hope you get treatment. I hope you live to be 100. Wait. He was trying to get out of bed, monitors beeping in protest. Please. At least let me buy you dinner. As a thank you. Just dinner. She should have said no. Should have walked out that door and never looked back. Should have protected herself from whatever this was. But something in his eyes stopped her. Something desperate and honest and completely unexpected. You just had a cardiac event, she said. You shouldn't be eating hospital food, but you definitely shouldn't be going to dinner. Then lunch. Next week, when they discharge me. Please. He settled back against the pillows, breathing hard. One lunch. That's all I'm asking. Let me thank you properly. Let me be human enough to show gratitude to someone who gave me my life back. Imani looked at him, really looked. At the expensive watch on his wrist she hadn't noticed before. At the way he carried himself even in a hospital gown, like he was used to people saying yes. At the genuine emotion in those gray eyes that might be real or might be very, very good acting. One lunch, she heard herself say. But you're not paying for my exam. We clear. Crystal clear. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Made him look younger. Hopeful. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might regret it. She opened the door, paused. And Mr. Merrick? Figure out what you were really doing in that exam room. Because nobody takes a medical licensing exam for fun. Whatever you're hiding, it's written all over your face. She left before he could respond. Walked back through those familiar halls with her heart pounding and her brain screaming at her that she'd just made the second stupid decision of the day. But maybe, just maybe, stupid decisions were how life actually changed. Her phone buzzed. Paloma, call me. Now. I know something's wrong. Imani stepped outside into the spring afternoon. The sun felt warmer now. The air less suffocating. She called her best friend and told her everything. And for the first time since she'd stood up in that exam room, she let herself cry. Paloma showed up at Imani's apartment 30 minutes later with wine, takeout, and the kind of righteous anger only a best friend could muster. That's it. We're suing them. Paloma paced Imani's tiny living room, waving chopsticks like weapons. The testing center, the medical board, whoever. You saved a man's life and they punished you for it? That's insane. That's the rules. Imani sat cross-legged on her second-hand couch, picking at pad thai she couldn't taste. Leave your desk, test gets invalidated. Everybody knows that going in. Rules are garbage when they punish good people for doing good things. Paloma dropped onto the couch beside her. Dark eyes fierce. Tell me about this guy. This Stellan. There's nothing to tell. You agreed to have lunch with him. As a thank you. That's it. But even as Imani said it, she remembered those gray eyes. The way he'd looked at her like she was something rare. Something valuable. He offered to pay for my retake. And you said no, because you're stubborn and proud and sometimes I want to shake you. I said no because I don't take handouts. Imani set down her food, appetite gone. Ma raised me better than that. When you accept money from people, especially people you don't know, it comes with strings. Always. Your ma also raised you to be smart, Paloma said gently. And sometimes smart means accepting help when you need it. I don't need his help. Imani. Paloma took her hand. You have 6 months. 6 months of night shifts and ramen and debt that's crushing you. 6 months before you can even try again. And what if something happens? What if you get sick? What if? I'll figure it out. I always do. You shouldn't have to always figure it out alone. Paloma squeezed her hand. That's what I'm trying to say. You've been alone since your ma died. 4 years of handling everything yourself, of being strong all the time, of never asking for anything. Maybe it's okay to let someone help. Maybe that's not weakness. Maybe that's just being human. Imani's phone buzzed before she could respond. Unknown number again. The text said, "This is Stellan. The nurse gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I wanted to say thank you again. And to tell you I'm looking forward to lunch. Next Wednesday. There's a place called Marlowe's near the hospital. Nothing fancy. Just good food and conversation. Sem. That him." Paloma leaned over to read the screen, eyebrows rising. He texts like a gentleman. That's either really good or really suspicious. Everything about him is suspicious. Imani stared at the message. He was taking the medical licensing exam. Why would someone like him, someone who can afford to offer to pay thousands of dollars without blinking, why would he be taking that exam? Maybe he wants to be a doctor? At 38? Starting medical school now. Imani shook her head. No. There's something else. Something he's not saying. So ask him. At lunch. Paloma grinned. Wednesday at Marlowe's. I know that place. It's nice but not too nice. Casual. He's not trying to impress you with money. Because he's hiding that he has money. Or because he's a decent guy who wants to get to know the woman who saved his life without making it weird. Paloma stood up, started gathering the takeout containers. Either way, You're going. And you're wearing that green dress I bought you last year that you never wear because you say it's too pretty for your life. I don't. You're wearing it. You're doing your hair. You're going to let yourself be a woman having lunch with an interesting man, not a struggling student with the weight of the world on her shoulders. For 2 hours, you're going to let yourself breathe. Paloma's voice softened. Your ma would want that. You know she would. Imani's throat tightened. Ma would tell me to be careful. That men who seem too good to be true usually are. And then she'd tell you to go anyway. Because your ma was careful, but she wasn't afraid of living. Paloma kissed the top of her head. Text him back. Say yes to Wednesday. And then get some sleep. You look exhausted. After Paloma left, Imani sat alone in the dark living room of her tiny apartment. Through the thin walls, she could hear her neighbors arguing. Above her, someone's footsteps creaked. This apartment was all she could afford. 4th floor walk-up, no elevator, windows that didn't quite close all the way, heating that worked when it felt like it. She'd lived here for 3 years. Through medical school's worst days, through night shifts that left her hollow, through grief that still ambushed her at random moments. These walls had seen her at her lowest. Maybe Paloma was right. Maybe it was time to let something good happen. She picked up her phone and typed, Wednesday works. Marlowe's at noon? Looking forward to it. Imani. His response came immediately. Perfect. Thank you for giving me this chance. I promise I'll make it worth your time. Imani stared at those words. Worth her time. Like her time was valuable. Like she was valuable. She hadn't felt valuable in a very long time. That night, working her shift in the hospital cafeteria, she caught herself looking toward the elevators every time the doors opened. Wondering if he was still upstairs. Wondering if he was thinking about her the way she was, against all logic, thinking about him. Her supervisor, an older woman named Ruth, noticed. You got that look, girl. That, something changed, look. What happened? Nothing, Imani said automatically. Nothing doesn't make your eyes light up like that. Ruth smiled, knowing. But that's okay. You keep your nothing. Just don't let it mess with your head too much. Some things that seem like nothing turn into everything. Imani thought about that the whole walk home. Some things that seem like nothing turn into everything. A stranger collapsing in an exam room. A choice made in 4 minutes. A lunch invitation from a man who was definitely hiding something. Nothing that might become everything. Or everything that might become nothing. She wouldn't know until Wednesday. Wednesday arrived wrapped in early summer warmth. Imani stood in front of her bathroom mirror wearing the green dress Paloma had insisted on, barely recognizing herself. The dress was simple, fitted but not tight, falling just above her knees, bringing out the warm undertones in her brown skin. She'd twisted her natural hair into a low bun, left a few curls loose around her face. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed she was trying too hard. But it was more than she'd done for herself in years. Her phone buzzed. Paloma, send me a picture right now. Imani snapped a quick selfie, sent it. 3 dots appeared immediately, then, girl. He's going to forget how to breathe. Go get your billionaire. He's not my anything, Imani typed back. And definitely not a billionaire. We'll see, Paloma sent, followed by 3 winking emojis. Marlowe's was a 10-minute walk from her apartment. Imani arrived 5 minutes early, because her mother had drilled punctuality into her bones. The restaurant was tucked between a bookstore and a coffee shop, the kind of place locals loved and tourists never found. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, plants hanging from the ceiling. Warm. Comfortable. Real. Stellan was already there. He sat at a corner table by the window, sunlight cutting across his face as he read something on his phone. He'd traded the hospital gown for dark jeans and a gray Henley that made his eyes look almost silver. His dark hair was still messy, but intentionally so now. He looked up the moment she walked in, and his whole face changed. Brightened. opened, became something she didn't have words for. He stood up immediately, nearly knocking over his water glass. Imani, you look, wow. It's just a dress. But she smiled despite herself. It's not just anything. He pulled out her chair, waited until she sat before returning to his own seat. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would. She unfolded her napkin, needing something to do with her hands. How are you feeling? They let you out. Yesterday morning. Clean bill of health, medication to manage the arrhythmia, and strict orders to avoid stress. He smiled wryly. Which is going to be interesting given my... He stopped abruptly. Given my life in general. There it was again. That careful editing. That sense of words held back. Given your what? Imani pressed. Your job? Your family? Your secret identity as a medical licensing exam taker? He laughed, surprised. You don't pull punches, do you? Life's too short for dancing around things. She met his eyes. So what were you really doing in that exam room, Stellan? Because we both know you weren't there to become a doctor. A server appeared before he could answer, taking their orders. Imani got the grilled chicken salad because it was cheapest. Stellan ordered the same without looking at the menu, and she wondered if that was intentional. If he'd noticed her scanning for prices. When they were alone again, he leaned forward, elbows on the table. What if I told you I was researching something? Trying to understand a process from the inside. I'd say that's a very expensive, very illegal way to do research. Impersonating a medical student? That's fraud. I wasn't impersonating anyone. I paid for the exam like everyone else. I just didn't finish it. His mouth quirked. For obvious reasons. You collapsed. I collapsed. After watching you for 2 hours. He said it casually, but there was weight behind the words. You were 3 rows behind me. I noticed you the second I walked in. The way you held your pencil. The way you checked and rechecked every answer. The way you looked at that test like your whole life depended on it. Imani's heart skipped. You were watching me? I was trying not to. You were distracting. He smiled, softer now. And then I collapsed and you saved my life, and I realized I'd been given the rarest gift, a chance to meet someone truly extraordinary. You don't know me well enough to call me extraordinary. Maybe. But I know you sacrificed everything in a room full of people who sacrificed nothing. I know you work yourself to exhaustion for a dream that might take years to achieve. I know you carry grief like weight but somehow keep moving forward. I know, he paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. I know I haven't stopped thinking about you for 5 days. The words hung between them like a held breath. I don't do this, Imani said quietly. I don't have time for dating or romance or whatever this is. My life is about survival and getting through medical school and eventually becoming the doctor my ma died believing I'd be. That's it. That's all there's room for. What if I'm not asking for room? Stellan reached across the table, stopping just short of her hand. Not touching. Not demanding. Just offering. What if I'm just asking for moments like this? Lunch on a Wednesday. Conversation with someone who makes me remember what it feels like to be honest. You're still not being honest. Not completely. No, he admitted. I'm not. But I want to be. I will be. Just, not yet. Not until I know you won't hate me for it. Their food arrived. They ate and talked about safer things, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, dreams they'd had as children. Stellan told her about growing up in boarding schools, about a father who died when Stellan was 33, about suddenly inheriting responsibilities he'd never wanted. What kind of responsibilities? Imani asked. The kind that make you question who you are. The kind that make you realize you've been playing a role your whole life and you don't know how to stop. He met her eyes. The kind that make you want to understand people who actually work for what they have. People who don't just inherit everything. Understanding clicked into place. You're wealthy. Really wealthy. Yes. And you were in that exam room, why? To see how the other half lives. To slum it with the struggling students. Anger crept into her voice. Was I some kind of social experiment? No. He said it fiercely. God, no. I was there because I'm trying to understand the healthcare system from every angle. Because my company, he stopped again. Because I'm in a position to make changes, and I don't want to make them from an ivory tower. I wanted to see what it's really like. What people like you sacrifice. People like me. Imani set down her fork. You mean poor people. Struggling people. People who aren't born with everything. People who earn everything. His voice was intense. People who know what things cost because they've paid for them with time and sweat and loss. People who make choices that matter. Yes. People like you. The server brought the check. Stellan grabbed it before Imani could. I pay my own way, she said. I know. But please. Let me do this one thing. You saved my life. Let me buy you lunch. She wanted to argue. Wanted to grab the check and throw money on the table and storm out like she had any pride left to preserve. But something in his eyes stopped her. One lunch, she said. That's it. One lunch, he agreed. They walked out into the summer afternoon together, and somehow they were still walking 30 minutes later. Through the park near the hospital, past the fountain where children played, along paths Imani walked every day but had never really seen. I can't promise you anything, she said finally. I can't promise time or attention or any of the things people want in relationships. My life is chaos, and it's going to stay chaos for years. I'm not asking for promises. Stellan stopped walking, turned to face her. I'm asking for honesty. For moments when we both stop pretending. For someone who sees me as human, not as a role or a bank account or an opportunity. Can you do that? Imani looked at him, really looked. Past the expensive watch and the careful words and the secrets he was clearly keeping. At the man underneath, who'd almost died and was scared and lonely and searching for something he couldn't name. I can try, she said. And when he smiled, something in her chest cracked open. Something that felt dangerous. Something that felt like hope. The texts started that night. Stellan, thank you for today. For giving me a chance I probably didn't deserve. Imani stared at her phone during her cafeteria shift, flour on her hands from restocking the bread station. You bought me lunch. We're even. Stellan, we're not even close to even. But I'll work on that. And he did. In ways Imani never expected. The next morning, she arrived at her apartment building to find her landlord, Mr. Chen, arguing with a building inspector about the broken heating system. The same heating system that had been under review for 18 months while Imani and every other tenant froze through winter. It'll be fixed by Monday, Mr. Chen was saying, looking annoyed. I got the notice. Some safety compliance thing. I have to do it, or they'll fine me. Imani climbed the stairs to her apartment, suspicion prickling at the back of her neck. Her phone buzzed. Stellan, how's your day going? Interesting. My landlord just got a building code violation notice. After ignoring problems for years. Stellan, maybe someone reported it. Maybe someone with money and connections reported it, she typed back. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, would that be such a bad thing? She called him instead of texting. He answered on the first ring. Did you report my landlord? No greeting. Straight to the point. I might have mentioned to a friend who works in code enforcement that there was a building with safety violations. His voice was careful. Hypothetically. Stellan, you mentioned your heating didn't work. In passing, during lunch. You said it like it was normal. Like you didn't deserve basic necessities. His voice intensified. That's not okay, Imani. You living in a place that's not safe, that's not taking care of you, that's not okay. You can't just. I didn't pay anyone. I didn't bribe anyone. I just made sure the right people knew about a problem. That's it. That's all I did. Imani sat down on her second-hand couch, something warm and terrifying spreading through her chest. Why? Because you matter. Because you shouldn't have to live like that. Because, he paused. Because I can't stop thinking about you, and that includes wanting you to be warm and safe. 2 weeks later, they were having coffee near the hospital before her shift. Stellan brought up medical school loans casually, like he wasn't dropping a bomb into her life. There are programs, he said. Debt forgiveness for healthcare workers who commit to underserved communities. Have you looked into them? I don't qualify. My loans are private, mostly. Scholarship covered tuition, but living expenses. She shrugged. I made choices. I live with them. What if I connected you with someone who specializes in restructuring medical education debt? Just a consultation. No commitments. Stellan. Not my money. Not me paying anything. Just information. Just options you might not know exist. He met her eyes. Let me help without helping. Please. She met with his contact the following week. A financial advisor who somehow knew her entire loan situation before she said a word. Who showed her programs she'd never heard of, refinancing options that could cut her monthly payments in half, pathways to forgiveness that seemed too good to be true. Mr. Merrick speaks very highly of you, the advisor said. He's invested in seeing talented people succeed. Invested. That word again. By midsummer, they'd fallen into a pattern. Coffee twice a week. Dinner when her schedule allowed. Long walks through the city where Stellan showed her places she'd lived near but never explored. Art galleries that stayed open late. Rooftop gardens hidden behind locked doors he somehow had keys to. A world that had always existed just beyond her reach. How do you have access to all this? She asked one evening as they sat in a private garden overlooking the city, stars emerging overhead. Connections, he said vaguely. Friends of friends. Rich friends of rich friends. Yes. He didn't apologize for it. I was born into a world most people never see. That's not my fault. But what I do with that access, that's my responsibility. She turned to look at him in the twilight. What do you do, exactly? For work. I run a company my father built. We invest in various industries. Healthcare, real estate, technology. He was choosing words carefully again. It's complicated. Everything about you is complicated. Is that bad? I don't know yet. But she was leaning closer to him without meaning to, drawn by gravity she couldn't resist. You're hiding something big. I can feel it. I know. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. And I promise, I'll tell you. When the time is right. When I know you won't. Won't what? Won't see me differently. Won't see just the money or the name or the expectations. Won't stop seeing me. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending electricity up her arm. I like how you see me now. Like I'm human. Like I matter beyond what I can provide. Their first kiss happened on a warm night in late July, 2 months after that lunch at Marlowe's. They were walking through the park near the hospital, taking the long way to her apartment building because neither wanted the evening to end. Imani had just finished a double shift. She was exhausted, smelled like cafeteria grease, hair falling out of its bun. She'd never felt less ready for romance. But when Stellan stopped walking and turned to face her under the glow of a streetlight, when his hand came up to cup her face with a gentleness that made her breath catch, when he looked at her like she was something precious, she forgot every reason this was a bad idea. I want to kiss you, he said quietly. But only if you want. She kissed him first. pulled him down by his collar, and pressed her lips to his, and felt the whole world narrow to this moment. His surprised inhale. His hands sliding into her hair. The way he kissed her back like he'd been waiting his whole life for this. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered. "I know it's too soon. I know you don't want to hear it. But I need you to know. I'm falling, Imani. Hard and fast and completely." She should have pulled away. Should have protected herself. Should have remembered that men who seemed perfect always had the biggest secrets. But instead she said, "I know. I feel it too." And she did. God help her, she did. August brought heat and complications in equal measure. Paloma met Stellan 3 weeks after that first kiss, and her reaction was immediate and complicated. They met at a small wine bar downtown, somewhere Imani had suggested because it was neutral territory. Stellan arrived first, dressed down in jeans and a t-shirt, trying so hard to look casual that it was almost painful to watch. "Relax," Imani murmured as Paloma walked in. "She's not going to bite you. I've seen pictures. She looks like she might bite me." He wasn't wrong. Paloma swept in wearing power clothes and an expression that could cut glass. She shook Stellan's hand with a grip that made him wince. "So you're the mysterious billionaire," she said, settling into her chair with the air of someone conducting an interrogation. Stellan glanced at Imani. "I never said billionaire. You didn't have to. I looked you up." Paloma smiled, sharp and knowing. "Stellan Merrick. CEO of Merrick Holdings. Net worth estimated at $3.2 billion. Youngest son of Richard Merrick, who died 5 years ago and left you everything. You took over the company at 33 with zero experience and somehow didn't run it into the ground. Actually expanded it. Impressive." The air left Imani's lungs. 3.2 billion. Stellan's jaw tightened. "The internet exaggerates." "The internet is conservative," Paloma corrected. "I have a friend who works in finance. She says you're worth closer to 5 billion if you count all the subsidiary companies and real estate holdings, which you deliberately keep separate to avoid attention." "Paloma," Imani started. "No, let her finish." Stellan's voice was carefully controlled. "I'm sure there's more." "There is." Paloma leaned forward. "You've been undercover for 6 months. Living in a modest apartment in the warehouse district, working odd jobs, taking that medical licensing exam as part of some kind of social research project for a healthcare investment you're considering. You've been pretending to be someone you're not." "I haven't pretended with Imani." "Haven't you?" Paloma's eyes were fierce. "Did you tell her you're a billionaire? Did you tell her your company is about to acquire one of the largest hospital networks in the country? Did you tell her that this research she thinks is altruistic is actually due diligence for a $40 billion deal?" Imani felt like she was falling. "What?" Stellan reached for her hand. She pulled away. "It's not like that," he said. "Then what's it like?" Imani's voice shook. "Explain it to me. Explain why you lied." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the definition of lying." She stood up, chair scraping. "You let me think you were just wealthy. Some rich guy who wanted to understand the system. Not a billionaire who's buying hospitals like they're toys." "I was going to tell you." "When? After you closed your deal? After you got whatever information you needed from the struggling medical student? Was I research too? Was I part of your due diligence?" "No." He stood, desperation in his eyes. "God, no. You were never." "Imani, please. Let me explain. I'm done listening to explanations." She grabbed her purse, hands shaking. "I'm done being the poor girl who doesn't know she's being used." "You're not being used. Then what am I?" The question came out raw. "What am I to you, Stellan? Really? Because from where I'm standing, I'm the perfect case study. The struggling student with crushing debt and big dreams. The one who saved your life and gave you the perfect in. The one who trusted you because she was stupid enough to think someone like you could actually care about someone like me. I do care about you. I love you. You love the idea of me. The story you can tell yourself about being connected to real people. But this. She gestured between them. This isn't real. This was never real. She left before he could respond. Paloma followed, throwing Stellan a look that could have melted steel. Outside, Imani made it half a block before her legs gave out. She sat on a bench, head in her hands, while Paloma rubbed her back. I'm sorry, Paloma said softly. I'm so sorry. But you needed to know. I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're someone who wanted to believe in good things. Paloma's voice hardened. He's the one who should feel like an idiot. Leading you on like that. Making you think. He said he loved me. Imani looked up, tears streaming down her face. 2 weeks ago, he said he was falling in love with me. And I believed him. I actually believed him. Maybe he was telling the truth. How can I trust anything he said? He's been lying from the beginning. Everything about him is a lie. Her phone started buzzing. Stellan calling. She declined it. It buzzed again. And again. Text messages piling up. Please let me explain. It's not what you think. I love you. That's not a lie. Nothing about us is a lie. I was wrong to keep this from you. I know that. But please don't throw away what we have because I was scared. I was scared you'd look at me differently. That you'd see the money instead of me. That I'd lose you before I ever really had you. Please, Imani. Just talk to me. Imani turned off her phone. Take me home, she said to Paloma. I need to be alone. That night, alone in her apartment with the heating that finally worked, Imani let herself shatter. She cried for the trust she'd given so freely. For the future she'd started to imagine. For the man she'd fallen in love with who'd turned out to be someone else entirely. But mostly she cried because part of her, the stupid, hopeful part that refused to die, still loved him. Still wanted to believe his explanations. Still wanted to call him back and hear his voice and forgive him for sins she couldn't even fully articulate. And that, more than anything, terrified her. Because loving someone you couldn't trust was the fastest way to destroy yourself. And Imani had worked too hard to survive to let anyone destroy her now. Stellan showed up at the hospital cafeteria 3 days later. Imani was restocking the salad bar when she saw him. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, wearing the same clothes from the wine bar confrontation like he'd been living in them. He stood at the entrance holding a folder, looking lost in a way that made her chest ache despite everything. Ruth noticed him first. That your man? The one who's had you walking around here like a ghost? He's not my man. Hum. Then why do you look like you want to run to him and run away from him at the same time? Before Imani could answer, Stellan spotted her. He started walking toward her, and she knew with certainty, that whatever he was about to say would change everything again. 5 minutes, he said when he reached her. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes of your time, and if you still want me gone, I'll leave. I'll never contact you again. I'll disappear. I'm working. I know. But, he glanced at Ruth, who was watching with undisguised interest. Please. I need you to understand. Ruth waved her hand. Go. Take your break early. Lord knows you need it. Imani followed Stellan to an empty table in the corner, as far from other people as possible. She sat across from him, arms crossed, every wall she'd ever built back in place. You have 5 minutes, she said. He opened the folder, pulled out documents. This is the hospital acquisition you learned about. Mercy Health Network. 15 hospitals across the state, including this one. I don't want to hear about your business deals. You need to. He pushed a document toward her. Because this isn't just business. This is why I was in that exam room. Why I've been researching from the inside. She looked down at the page. Financial projections. Patient care statistics. Profit margins that made her stomach turn. Mercy Health has been gutted by its current owners, Stellan continued, voice low and intense. They've cut staff, reduced care quality, prioritized profits over patients. People are dying because of decisions made in boardrooms by people who've never set foot in a hospital except for charity galas. So you're going to do what? Buy them and be different. Yes. No hesitation. I'm going to buy them and rebuild them. Proper staffing levels. Fair wages. Resources for underserved communities. Healthcare that actually serves people instead of extracting wealth from them. And I'm supposed to believe you? The billionaire who lied to my face for months. I didn't lie. I withheld information because I was terrified. He leaned forward. You want to know the truth? I've spent my whole life being Richard Merrick's son. Being the heir to a fortune I didn't earn. Being someone people see as a walking bank account. When I met you, when you looked at me like I was just a person, just Stellan, not Stellan Merrick of Merrick Holdings, I couldn't risk losing that. So you decided to keep lying. I decided to let you see me before you saw the money. And yes, that was wrong. I should have told you weeks ago. I should have trusted that you'd, his voice cracked, that you'd still see me afterward. Imani looked at the documents. At the plans for reformed healthcare. At projections showing improved patient outcomes alongside reduced profit margins. This will cost you billions, she said. Yes. Your board will fight you. They already are. You could lose everything. Not everything. His hand moved toward hers, stopped. I already lost what matters most. She wanted to stay angry. Wanted to hold onto the betrayal like armor. But looking at these documents, at the genuine transformation he was proposing, at the way he was gambling his fortune on doing the right thing. Why healthcare? She asked quietly. With all the industries you could invest in, why this? Because my father died of a stroke. He might have survived if he'd been in a properly staffed hospital instead of one that had cut neurologists to save money. The words came out bitter. I was with him when it happened. Watched him deteriorate while doctors who were overworked and understaffed did their best with resources they didn't have. He died because profit margins mattered more than human lives. I didn't know. Nobody knows. It's not in the press releases. He looked at her with raw vulnerability. After he died, I took over the company swearing I'd change things. But I realized I had no idea what actually needed changing. I'd never lived in the real world. Never struggled. Never had to choose between medication and rent. Never worked myself to exhaustion just to survive. So I went undercover. Lived modestly. Took jobs. Tried to understand. And met me. And met you. And fell in love. And suddenly all my careful plans for staying detached and objective went out the window because I couldn't stop thinking about the woman who saved my life and then saved me in ways that had nothing to do with CPR. Imani's chest was tight. You hurt me. You made me feel like I was a project. Like I was research. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His eyes were wet. But you were never research. You are, the most real thing that's ever happened to me. Every conversation, every moment, every time you called me on my bullshit and made me be better, that was real. My feelings are real. How do I trust that? How do I trust anything when you hid something this massive? I don't know. But I'm asking you to try. He pulled out another document. This is the detailed plan for the hospital acquisition. Every change I'm planning. Every reform. I want you to read it. I want your input. He took a shaky breath. I want a partner. Someone who understands what healthcare should be because she's lived it. Someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong and keep me honest and make sure this doesn't become another rich man's vanity project. You're asking me to work with you. I'm asking you to consider it. After you take your exam in 4 months. After you get your license. After you've had time to process everything. He stood up, leaving the folder on the table. But mostly I'm asking you to believe that what we have is worth fighting for. That I'm worth a second chance. That love matters more than money. He turned to leave, stopped. And, Imani? For what it's worth, I'd give up every dollar to have you back. The company, the fortune, all of it. Because none of it matters if I can't share it with someone who makes me want to be better. None of it matters without you. He walked away before she could respond. Imani sat alone with the documents, Ruth appearing beside her with coffee. That man loves you, stupid, Ruth said. Question is, do you love him enough to forgive him? I don't know, Imani whispered. But she took the folder home that night. And she started reading. Imani spent 2 weeks reading every page of Stellan's proposal. She read it during her cafeteria breaks. Read it on the bus to and from work. Read it at 2 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come and her mind kept circling back to gray eyes and broken promises and plans that could actually change lives. The proposal was extraordinary. Detailed staffing ratios that prioritized patient care. Mental health resources for healthcare workers. Debt forgiveness programs for medical students who committed to working in underserved communities. Investment in technology that reduced administrative burden instead of replacing human connection. Community health initiatives that addressed root causes instead of just treating symptoms. It was everything she'd ever dreamed healthcare could be. And it was being designed by the man who'd broken her heart. Paloma found her on a Saturday morning, surrounded by documents and coffee cups in her tiny living room. You're still reading that? Paloma settled onto the couch, moving papers aside. Girl, you've been living in these documents for 2 weeks. Have you even called him? No. Have you decided what you're going to do? No. Imani rubbed her eyes, exhausted. I don't know how to separate what I feel for him from what he did. I don't know if I'm reading this because it's brilliant or because I'm looking for reasons to forgive him. Maybe both. Paloma picked up a page, scanned it. This is good work, Imani. Like, genuinely transformative work. He's not just talking about change, he's planned for it. Budgeted for it. He's willing to lose billions to make it happen. I know. And he did it because his father died in a system that failed him. Because he watched someone he loved suffer. Because he wanted to understand before he tried to fix things. Paloma set down the paper, met Imani's eyes. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Wanting to fix a broken system because you lost someone to it. Imani's throat tightened. That's different. Is it? You're both trying to honor people you lost. You're both willing to sacrifice for it. You're both stubborn as hell and too proud to ask for help when you need it. Paloma smiled gently. You're more alike than you want to admit. He lied to me. He withheld information because he was scared. There's a difference. Paloma took Imani's hand. I'm not saying what he did was right. I'm saying maybe it was human. Maybe he made a mistake because he'd never met anyone who saw past his money before. Maybe he was protecting something precious and went about it the wrong way. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you the truth. Paloma squeezed her hand. You love him. I can see it every time you read these documents. Every time your phone buzzes and you check if it's him. Every time you look at that folder like it holds the answers to everything. What if I forgive him and he hurts me again? What if you don't forgive him and you spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been? Paloma's voice softened. Your ma always said life was about taking chances on good things. This man is offering you a chance to transform healthcare, to honor your mother's memory by helping people who can't afford care, to partner with someone who believes in the same things you do. And yeah, he messed up. But he's trying to make it right. Imani looked at the documents. At the section on debt forgiveness programs that could help hundreds of students like her. At the community health initiatives that could have saved her mother. At the evidence of someone who'd spent months learning what needed changing and was willing to sacrifice his fortune to change it. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, baby. But you're brave. You proved that the day you stood up in that exam room." Paloma stood, kissed the top of her head. "Now prove it again. Take the chance. See what happens." After Paloma left, Imani sat alone with the documents and her phone. She picked up the phone, put it down, picked it up again. Her fingers found Stellan's number. Hesitated. Pressed call before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the first ring. "Imani." His voice was rough, desperate, hopeful. Like he'd been waiting for this call for 14 days and thought it might never come. "I read everything," she said. Silence. Then, and it's brilliant. Transformative. Everything healthcare should be." She took a breath. "And I have about 200 questions and at least 50 suggestions for improvement. I'll answer every question. Take every suggestion." A pause. "Does this mean?" "It means I want to talk. Really talk. No more secrets. No more hiding. If we're going to do this, any of this, I need complete honesty. About your company, your plans, your life, everything." "Yes. God, yes. Anything you want to know. Anything. Can you meet me? Tonight? Same park where we had our first kiss. I'll be there." His voice cracked with emotion. "Thank you, Imani. Thank you for giving me another chance." "I haven't forgiven you yet," she said. "But I'm willing to try. Don't make me regret it." "I won't. I promise, I won't." After she hung up, Imani looked at her reflection in the dark window. Saw a woman who'd survived loss and poverty and crushing disappointment. A woman who'd sacrificed everything to save a stranger. A woman who'd fallen in love despite every logical reason not to. A woman who was brave enough to risk her heart one more time. She changed into the green dress. Fixed her hair. Applied lipstick with hands that shook slightly. Ruth's words echoed, "That man loves you, stupid." Maybe that was enough. Maybe love that made you stupid was worth fighting for. Maybe being brave meant forgiving when forgiveness seemed impossible. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, toward the park, toward the man who'd broken her heart and was desperately trying to put it back together. Toward a future that was terrifying and uncertain and full of possibility. Toward everything.